Hi guys, welcome back. So today I've got another tutorial for you here where we're going to be creating this kind of horizontal scroll page, and we're using these SVG kind of reveal effects. You can see as well it's kind of smooth scrolling. When we scroll, the images go smaller, and we're also getting this kind of parallax overlay on one of the image rows. So just to show the SVG filters again. So it's quite a cool effect how they transitioned in. We're just playing around with different frequencies just to get the effects different. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, guys, and let's get going. Thanks. Right, guys, so for this project, I've got an index.html file, a style.css, and an app.js file. You can see I've got an images folder here as well, which is 5 random images from Unsplash. I just searched for kind of spooky, eerie images. I've also got this noise GIF as well. This is going to be used to create that kind of noisy background effect. And then I've also just got this fonts folder, which contains a free font I downloaded online called Hammond Semi-Bold. Use whatever font you want for this project, really. So if you come to our index.html file, the first thing I'm going to do is just get a boilerplate up, and then in the head, we'll just link to our style.css, like so. And then in the body, a script source to our app.js file, like so. Okay, and then let's just open this in live server so we can see our changes as we go. Okay, so I'm going to just rename the document. We'll just say title of haunted here. And then in the body section, I'm just going to say H1, and we'll just say haunted in here like that. Okay, and then underneath this, next thing we're going to have is a main element. Okay, and this is going to be fixed to the screen. We're going to be using a kind of smooth scrolling effect on this. And then the next thing we're going to do is in the main section, we're going to have a slider called slider, a div called slider main for a class. Okay, and this is going to be the slider which we perform the transformations on to make it look like the content's moving. And then in here, we're just going to have, so we're going to have two inner sliders here, okay, because we want to get some kind of parallax effect going. So I'm going to say .slider inner 1, and then we'll also have, as I said, we're having 2, so I'll just add another one, and we'll just say 2 underneath that. Okay, so now in the first slider, what we're going to do, we're not going to be using like actual image elements here. We're going to be using an SVG, okay, because we want to use those cool SVG turbulence and displacement map filter effects to get that kind of cool fading effect I showed you in the preview. So let's do that first. We're just going to say SVG here, like so. Do an SVG tag, and then I'm just going to give this an ID, and we'll just say filter 1. Okay, this is going to be our first image. Okay, and then close that down. And then within this SVG, actually no, I want to give this, I'm just going to say a view box, sorry, we'll say view box, and that's going to equal, and here we'll say 0, 0, 100, 100. And I'll show you what that does shortly. Then just take that ID out for now, that filter ID. And then in here, within the SVG tags, we're going to have a filter tag. Okay, so we'll say filter, like so. And then, so this is where I'm going to just apply that ID. So this is going to be an ID of filter 1. And then in here, so this is where we're going to store our SVG filters we want to apply to the image. Okay, so let me just make this a bit bigger so we can see what's going on. So the first filter I want to apply is called FE, and that's for filter effects, short for filter effects, and we'll say turbulence. Okay, and then I'm just going to say here, let's give it a type. That's going to equal turbulence. And then we'll also say, we'll give it a base frequency. And we're going to give this a base frequency. That's going to equal 0.07 and then 0.06. So that's for the x-axis and the y-axis. And you'll see what these values do shortly, okay, when we see the effect on our images. And then say num octaves next. That's going to equal, so it's any number you want really. I'm going to use 5 for this case. And then after this, I'm just going to say stitch tiles. That's going to equal stitch, like so. And then make sure I've got that, just tie it up a bit. That should be tiles with capital T. Like so. And then after this, we're going to say X equals 0%. And then we'll say Y equals 0%. And then we'll also just, so last three things we need to do here is just say a width and a height. So we want 100% of the image. So we say width equals 100%. And then after that, height equals 100%. And then finally, we just say the result equals noise. Okay, and the results, this is the result that this first filter will provide. And then we're going to add this noise result to the next filter, okay? And that should just be like so, and then we can just remove this. Okay, and then next filter we want to use is called the displacement map, okay? So we'll say FE displacement map, like so. And then here we're going to say in, and here we're just going to pass in the source graphic. Okay, and that's the image we're going to provide in a second, which is the first image in our images folder. And then the into, okay, and that's going to equal this noise that we created here. Okay, so we'll just say noise. And then I'm going to say here, after this, scale equals, and then we'll just say 10. And then after this, we'll say X channel selector. That's going to equal R for the red channel. And then we'll say Y channel selector. And here I'm just going to say equals B, like so. And then again, we just want to do the same X, Y. So I'm just going to copy these. So X from X to Y, width and height. I'll just paste those in there like so. Okay, so that's it for our filters, guys. So there's a little bit to write there. It's a bit annoying, but that's all you need for this effect, really. Okay, and then after the filter section, we're just going to add an image. Okay, and then so after this, let's just close this down. In this image, the first thing we want to add, the first attribute is the X link, colon href. And we're going to set that equal to our images folder. Okay, so I'm just going to say /images /1.jpg. Okay, and then after this, I'm just going to say, again, I'm going to copy that, this X, Y height, width and height again. We'll paste that in there like so. And then I think that's pretty much, and we just need to add the filter next. So I'm just going to say filter, and that's going to equal, and here we say URL, and then I'm just going to say the ID of filter 1, which we set up here. Okay, so now if I close that down, and you can see now we have that image, but you'll notice it's very distorted now. Okay, so this is our first image. If we come to our images folder, so we have this creepy girl here. So if we can see that we've got all this kind of noise distortion going on, and you can change the kind of base frequency parameters to suit what you want. Well, let's see what this number of octaves does. I don't know if that changes anything. It changes it slightly, but not too much. So also, if you change this, for example, so this first base frequency parameter, you'll see you can get like some really different effects here. So 0.1, we change this to 0. You kind of get all these different kind of, it's just this different frequencies, different noise, which is disrupting the image. Okay, so as I say, yeah, experiment really, see what you kind of like there, and yeah, let's move on to the next part. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm just going to copy this SVG filter. So for the first slider, this slider in the one, I want to have 3 images in there. Okay, so we'll say Let's copy this down, this SVG section. And here, I'm just going to call this filter 2. We have to have individual filters for each image, okay? It's very important. Otherwise, if we apply effect to one image, it will affect all the other images as well. And just remember to change the URL down here as well. So that'll be filter 2. And then I'm going to change the image as well to 2. Okay, and then we'll do the same again for the third image. Again, change the filter to 3. And I also just want to set the filter here to 3 as well. And again, change the image like so. And then that's it for our first slider. I'm going to come down to the second slider now, the inner slider, and we'll just do the same thing. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that SVG section again. This will be the fourth image. And so change that to filter 4, and then image 4, and finally we'll just do that fifth image. Okay, so filter 5, and then we'll just say image is 5 and the filter of 5 here as well. Okay, so we have our images now. Yeah, that's looking okay for now. So next we want to do is just I think that's it for our HTML, guys. So let's move on to our CSS now, okay? So obviously these SVGs, there's a lot of kind of markup you have to add, but you know, I think the effect's pretty cool and it's worth it. So let's move on. So to the CSS now. The first thing I'm going to do in my CSS is just, as always, we'll get the global settings. So we'll just say margin 0, padding 0, box size in border box, like so. And then I'm also just going to add that font, okay? So in order to do that, come above the global settings, and here I've just said at font face, and then I've just said the font family name is going to be this Harmond, okay? And then the URL, I just need to go to ./fonts/ and then select that semi-bold condensed OTF, and as it's an OTF file, that's an open type format. So I've just applied that there, and then I'm just going to say in here font family, and here we'll just say Harmond, and then as a backup I'm just going to say serif font. Okay, and now you can see we've got that cool font applied. So next thing I want to do underneath this is I'm going to select the body, say body here, and then I want to say position, background color. And here we're just going to say F0, 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 that kind of creamy background color. And then we'll say a width of, I'll give it a width of 100%. And then a height 100 VH. And then we'll say over scroll behavior. And just to show what this does, so when we scroll up, you can see we get that bounce. So I don't want that to occur here, so I'm just going to say none. And now we don't get that bounce when we scroll up anymore, okay? And then underneath, I think that's it for now for our body. So kind of underneath this, we're just going to say the H1 element next. Select the H1. And I'm going to position this fixed, okay? Because I want it to be stuck to the center of the screen. And then I'm going to say a top 40%. And then we'll say left 50%. And then I want to translate minus 50%, and that'll just make this image go dead center to the screen, like so here. And then underneath this, I'm just going to say Z index of 1, because I want this to be in front of everything, all the images. And then I'm going to give this a color of white. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is just going to apply a mixed blend mode to this as well. So we'll say mixed blend mode difference, like so. And that'll basically it'll make it blend in with the background. No matter what background it is, it will blend in. So you can see you get that kind of adjustment no matter what background the text is against, okay? And then next thing I want to do here is underneath, I'm just going to say font size. I'm going to set this to 5 rem, make it a bit bigger. And then we'll also just apply some letter spacing as well. So letter spacing, just 5 pixels, just to space out the letters slightly. Okay, it's looking good. So underneath the H1 next, I'm next going to select the main element. Okay, and this is going to be, as I said before, it's going to be fixed. So position, fixed. And then here, we want to fix it to just the whole viewport. Okay, so top 0, left 0, width 100%, height 100 viewport heights to fill the screen. Okay, so that's, if we just do a background color here, you can see that it's kind of filling the whole viewport in the background. Okay, so now underneath this, I just next want to select the slider main. So we'll say slider hyphen main. Okay, and you'll remember this is the main slider, which contains both the inner sliders. So we have the first inner slider and the second inner slider. So what we're going to do here is going to position this slider main absolute to the parent, which is the main element. And then here we'll say left 0, top 0, and then we'll say a width. I'm going to give this a width of 180 viewport widths. Okay, so it's going to be wider than the screen. And then I'm also going to say a height of 100% to fill the main element vertically. And then we'll also say here, I want to give this a background color of F0, 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 like so. And then underneath this, I'm also just going to say, we'll give this a border as well. It's quite a nice little effect. So we'll say border. And I'm going to give this a border of 10 pixels solid. And we'll just say 161616. It's kind of near enough a black color. Okay, so now you can see we've got this kind of border around the edge of the screen. It looks quite cool in a minute. And then I'm also just going to say will change here. And I'm going to say transform. And what this does, we're going to perform like transformations on this because we're going to be scrolling this horizontally, this slider, and we're going to be using the transform to do that. And this just optimizes the browser to perform this transformation to make our animations a bit more smoother. Okay, it basically, I think I've read into this. It looks into it kind of offloads the work to the GPU as opposed to the CPU processing all the animations in the Chrome browser. It will lay off some of the animations to the GPU, which makes it more efficient. Okay, and then underneath this, let's next go to our slider inner one. So say dot slider hyphen inner hyphen 1. And then here, I'm going to say position absolute again. And then we want to say here left 0. And then top, I want to position this about 10 viewport heights from the top. Okay, and then we'll say under here as well, a width, we'll just give this a width of 100% to fill the slider element. And then I'm also just going to say here, I want to give it a height of, we'll say 65 viewport heights. And then underneath this as well, we're just going to say display flex. So we're going to use flexbox to align the images horizontally in the inner slider. And then I'm going to say justify content here to space around, just to add some white space between all the images. Okay, as you can see, we kind of get this layout occurring now. And then also here, I'm just going to say, again, we want to apply this will change transform. Like so. Okay, and then let's just do a similar thing for the slider 2 next. So we'll come under here, copy that, change that to 2. And again here, what I want to do is, so I'm going to say, I want to set the left to be 40 viewport heights, viewport width, sorry. So we'll say left 40 VW. And then we'll say top, I want a top of 40 viewport widths as well, like so. And then I'm going to give this a width of 120% and a height of 50 viewport heights, like so, just make it a bit smaller. Again, we're displaying flex, we're justifying the content space around, and we're setting the will change to transform. Okay, so you can see we're kind of getting this, it's starting to align a bit better now, okay? So next thing we want to do here, we just got two more things. So we just have the SVG. I'm going to say SVG. And here I'm going to give these SVGs a width of 400 pixels. And then we're also going to say a height of 100% of the inner slider container. And then we'll also just say a padding here of 20 pixels, like so. And then I also want to say underneath here, opacity of 0. Okay, so I don't want to see these at first. I want the effect to kind of be like a fade in, animate on scroll effect. And again, I'm just going to say wheel change transform here. Actually, yeah, we'll do that for now. And then I'm also just going to say transition here as well. I'm going to say all 0.5 seconds, ease out. And then obviously I want to apply, when we're going to apply an active class to this when the images come into the viewport. So we'll say svg.active here, and I'm going to say opacity of 1. Okay. And that's it for our CSS. Okay, so let's move on to our JavaScript now. So if we come up here and go into our JavaScript. Now the first thing I want to do in my JavaScript is just get the selectors going. Okay, so I'll say let main slider equal document.query selector. And here we're just going to select that .slider hyphen main like so. And then I'm going to say let inner slider 1. That's going to equal document.query selector again. And here we'll just say, let's just copy that over. Yes, it's a slider inner 1. I'm going to add a dot there underneath that. Okay, and then we'll do the same for the slider 2 as well. Okay, so 2, change that as well, the name. Okay, and then I also just want to select all of my SVG images as well. So I'm going to say let images equal, use an array here, spread operator, we'll say documents.query selector all, and then we're going to select all of the SVG files or SVG images. Okay, so if we console.log images, go to our console, and you can see we have our SVG images there. Obviously you can't see them at the moment because we have the opacity at 0. And then we've got some errors here. Okay, I'll have to look at that in a second. It looks like we're not recognizing that. So next what I want to do here is I'm just going to say let image items, and you'll see what I do in this shortly. This is going to be where we're going to create a class called image items, and this is where we're going to store all instances of these classes, okay, of this class. And so underneath this, I also just want to set a current variable. This is going to be for our linear interpolation. We're going to be using to create our animations. So we have a current variable, a target variable. That's going to equal 0 for now. And we'll also have an ease variable. So that's 0.075. And that should be ease. Okay, and then underneath this, let's get some functions up and running. So the first thing we're going to add is just this linear interpolation function. So we'll say function lerp, and that obviously, as per previous videos, that takes in a start, an end, and a t variable or the ease variable. And what this does, this just returns, the equation is start times 1 minus t plus end times t. Okay, and this is just like an easing function. It basically takes at a start and an end value, and it works out the percentage between those two, and then for each animation frame it will perform the transformation based on the result of this calculation. Okay, and then underneath this, next we want to do is I'm just going to say init. We're going to create an init function. So say function init for initialize, And here we're just going to set the body height. Okay, so document.body.style.height. And that's going to equal, and here we'll just say we're going to get our main slider. So we'll say, do a template literal here. We're going to say main slider, and then we're going to say get bounding client rect next. And then we'll say .width. Okay, so that gets the width of our main slider, which is, you remember in our CSS, it was, where is our main slider? Yeah, slider main, it was 180 viewport width. So this will get the width of that slider in pixels. And then what we want to do here as well is you just want to subtract the window.inner width minus window.inner height. And then don't forget to add pixels after this. Okay, so we'll come out of the template literal and just say pixels. And then that should be it. Okay, yeah, so if we now call this init function, we should have, yeah, you can see now we get the scroll bar. Okay, so next thing we want to do here underneath that is we're just going to create an animate function next. So we'll say function. Actually, let's get one more helper function in first. It's going to be called transform elements. Okay, so transform element. And this takes in the element we want to transform as well as the transformation we want to apply. And then here we'll just say element, the element we pass in, .style.transform equals that transform we pass in as well. Okay, and then underneath this, we're going to say, we're going to create an animate function next. So function animate. Okay, and then what we're going to do here, the first thing we're going to do is just, we're going to change the target value. Remember we set it to 0 at the top here. We want to set this to the scroll wire position. Okay, so we'll say target equals window.scroll wire. And then we also want to set the current. Okay, so we're going to say here current equals, and we're going to use that lerp function next. Remember that takes in the start, which is going to be the current position. We start it off at 0 here. And this is always, the current variables after that is always going to be the interpolated value when it takes in the current value, the target value, as well as the ease in value. Okay, so the ease in we'll set here, we'll just pass in that ease variable which we set up here, which was 0.075. And then we're also going to just add one more thing after this, saying 2 fixed to 2 decimal places. Okay, because sometimes this lerp function can bring back a float with loads of decimal places, and that can sometimes slow down the performance of the calculations for the animation. So underneath this, the next thing I want to do here is I'm just going to say transform elements, and I just want to transform our main slider next. Okay, and the transformation we want to apply is we're going to say translate 3D, and here 3D takes in 3 arguments, the 3D. So first is the x-axis, so obviously we want our slider to move horizontally, so I'm just going to say here we'll do a template literal, and I'm going to say minus current and then pixels after, and then for the y-axis will be 0, and then for the z-axis will be 0 as well. Now just a quick one, we're using this translate 3D. Again, this will it's good for performance. If we tell the browser to use 3D transformations, Chrome will use the GPU to it will offload some of the some of the calculations to the GPU, which gives it it kind of balances out the performance for this kind of stuff. So let me just I want to see our images for now. So let's just make them viewable again. So we'll just remove this opacity setting for now. And then if I call this animate function now, okay, so we'll say animate. And what I also want to do here is just say request animation frame. And here we'll say animate, like so. And this will basically, it's like a recursive, it will call the animate function over and over again. It will request a new animation frame. Okay, so we'll call this outside at the bottom here. And now you can see our slider moves along Okay. So that's looking okay for now. We're getting that transformation applied. If you can see the Chrome console, if we scroll, you can see we're getting that translate 3D on the x-axis. Okay, so that slider is now moving with the scroll position. Okay, so next thing we want to do here is I'm going to say underneath this, the next thing we want to do is I'm just going to adjust the speed of our slider 2. Okay, so we'll come under here. I'm just going to say transform element again. We'll also say slider, inner slider 2. And the transformation I want to apply to this is, again, we want to say translate 3D. Actually, let's just copy this. And here, I'm just going to speed up the transformation slightly. So I want to say times 1.1. Okay, and now you can see we get that kind of cool parallax effect on the scroll. Okay, so if we refresh that, that's looking quite cool now. We're getting that nice sort of smooth parallax effect. Okay, so the next thing we want to do here, so we're getting there. I just want to add another, we're just going to say up the top here, window.add event listener. We'll listen out for the resize event, because when we resize our window at the moment, it's kind of making all the dimensions go funny. So we're just going to call the init function when we resize, okay? And then that should just resize everything nicely. Okay, so it never goes out of kind of, the dimensions are always applied correctly, no matter how small or big our screen size is now. That's looking good. Okay, so next thing I want to do is let's get some a class up and running for these image items. Okay, so this is where we're going to apply these kind of this distorted reveal effect on our images. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create some intersection observer options. Okay, so I will say intersection observer options, and here, so the options, we'll say let options, and that's going to equal an object, and the first option is the root margin, and we're going to set that to 0 pixels, and then we're also going to set the threshold here, and I'm going to set that to 90%, so we'll just say 0.9 like so, and you'll see why we're doing these shortly. I have explained this before in previous videos, but I will explain again. Underneath this, let's get the class up and running next, so we'll say class image item, and let's do a constructor here, and this takes in the element, so we're going to pass an element for each new instance of the image item class, and we'll say this dot element equals the element we pass in. We're also going to set this dot is visible, that's going to equal false when we start. And then underneath this, I'm going to say this dot observer. So we're going to create each individual image item is going to have its own observer, intersection observer. Okay, so say equals new intersection observer, and here we pass in the entries here. So for each entry, and then we're going to say entries dot for each entry. And here we're just going to say this dot is visible equals entry dot is intersecting. So just to explain what this code's doing, we so for each image item class, we set a is visible variable to false, and then we also just create an observer for each image item. For the image item, we're basically saying here, we're setting this is visible variable here to true if the entry is intersected on the screen. Okay, so if our images appear on the screen, this is visible variable will be set to true. Okay, and then we can apply the relevant animations. So next thing I want to do here is I'm just going to say this dot observer dot observe, and we're just going to say this dot elements, the element we pass in. And then again, I'm going to set my own, we're going to apply like some linear interpolation animations to each individual image item here. So I'm just going to say this dot current, and we're going to start off at 150. And then this dot target will start off at 150 as well. And then this dot ease is going to equal 0.1, 10%. And then that's pretty much it. We're next going to just call a function. So this dot set displacement, like so. And we're going to create that now. And that's it for our constructor. Okay, so let's just do that function now. We'll say set displacement in here, or the method rather. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to set the this dot el dot query selector. And then we want to select the FE displacement map, which remember is one of our filters in our SVG, this FE displacement map here. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say dot scale dot base val equals this dot current, like so. Okay, so what we're basically doing here is we've set the current variable to 150. So, and we're just setting, we're setting this dot current. So that'll basically just make it, our images all have this kind of noisy distortion when we first load the page, and then when they come into the viewport, we're going to trigger an animation to make them look all smooth, okay, or normal rather. So now come underneath this. Next we want to do is just create a render function or method. So we'll say render, and then what this render function is going to do, we're just going to say if this dot is visible, so that means the image is in the viewport, and this dot target is not equal to 0, which it won't be at first because we set the target for each individual item to 150, then we're going to say this dot target equals 0. Okay, and then we're also going to say this dot l dot class list dot add, and then we're just going to add that active class to make the images not see-through anymore. And then coming out of this if statement, we're going to say this dot current equals, and then we're going to use the lerp function again, and then we'll just pass in this dot current, and then this dot target, and then this dot ease. And then after that, we're just going to say dot to fixed, and that should be lerp, not export. To fixed, and then to two decimal places again. Okay, and then underneath this, we're just going to say this dot L dot query selector. We'll get that displacement map again, and then we're just going to say dot scale. We'll just copy this really. Okay, so again, just to explain what's going on here, we're saying in the render function, if the image instance comes into the viewport, which this will be true, and if this dot target is not equal to 0, which it won't be at first, we're going to set this target to 0. Okay, and then that will basically we're going to just apply this kind of, so we're going to set the base val to 0, and that will make the images smooth, okay, or normal. We won't get any of this noise anymore. So that's what we're doing there. Okay, so after that, once this render function comes into place, the image comes into the viewport, we'll get a nice slow transition from a noisy image to a smooth image, normal image. Okay, and then so coming out of this, the next thing I want to do here is in our animate function, we're going to come underneath this part here. We're going to do a for loop next. I'm going to say let I equals 0. And actually, before I do that, let's just create these image items. So I'm going to say here images dot for each image, And in here, we're just going to say image items dot push. And here we're going to push the new, or a new instance of the image item passed in that image. Okay, so remember our image items are basically all the SVG items here. And we're basically just creating a new image item class, instance of that image item class, pushed in that SVG element. Okay, and then in our animate function, next thing we're going to do here is just say for let I equal 0, whilst I is less than the image items array dot length, we'll say I plus plus, and then we're just going to say in here image items I dot render. Okay, we're going to call out the image items render function for each of our images. Okay, so I think we're nearly there, guys. So let's just again, having an issue here. Let's just see what's going on. Reference error. Item is not defined. So where's that? That should be image. So passing the image here. Okay. So what's going on now? So now we have cannot read property add of undefined. Why is that not working then? Let's have a look what's going on. So if this state is visible, list.class list. Should that be a capital? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so you can now see we get that nice kind of image fading effect when we move out. Let's make that a bit bigger just so we can see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so you get that kind of nice kind of distorted image effect as they come in. So it's looking quite cool now. What I do want to say here is I want to pass in the options because at the moment we're seeing all the images load straight away. So let's just, we created these options up here if you remember. So our intersection observer options, I just need to pass them in after. So we'll say after this, pass the options in. Okay, and then what else I want to do here is just, we'll set the opacity to 0 again. Okay, so now, you'll see we get that nice cool fade in effect. Okay, so that's looking good. So the next thing I want to do here is I just want to make the images scale down when we scroll. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to come back to my animation function and we'll say app.js. So in our animate function, next thing I want to do here, we'll say image items.render. I'm going to do an if statement after this. So we'll say if the current or the value of current is less than target, and we'll just subtract 50 from that. And after that we'll say or current is greater than target plus 50. I'll put that in a bracket as well. Then we'll say, close that down, we'll say, we'll do a transform element. And here I'm just going to say image items I dot L for the element, the SVG element. And what we want to do here, I'm just going to say scale, and we'll scale it down to 0.8. Else, we'll say we just want it to be at 1, the normal size. So we'll just say scale 1, like so. So now we should get, yeah, you can see the images go small when we scroll. Okay, so I'm going to leave this there now, guys. That's basically this effect. Actually, we did have a few errors, didn't we? So let's just tidy those up as well. So we'll say here, what do we see? If we go to our console. FE turbulence attributes, stitch tiles, unrecognized. Okay, let me just see what is going on with that. So, stitch tiles. Okay, so if we go to our index.html, that needs to be stitch. Okay, sorry about that. Let's change that. Hopefully that will get rid of the error. Yeah, it does. And what I also want to do here, guys, I think it does, you know, if they're all at the kind of same effect, it looks a bit dull. So you just mess around really. So we'll change around these values as well. So, you know, I can say the base frequency 0. You know, mess around with these numbers. Just you can see you kind of just get different like noise variations. If we slow down the lerp function as well, so we'll say for each instance we'll set the ease to 0.05. That'll be too slow, to be honest, but actually it's not too bad. Yeah, you can see you get it's really some quite cool effects in there really. So yeah, have a play, see what you think, and yeah, that's it, guys. I'm going to stop the video there. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.